What's up, Giants fans, Hub watchers, Kidblue watchers, YouTube subscribers, Twitter and Instagram followers? Welcome into another episode of the Young Guns Podcast, episode 62, live here with a very special guest, WFAN Giants beat reporter and also co-host slash host of Big Blue Kickoff Live. We got one of the legends in here, Paul Dottino tonight, man. Paul, how you doing? Kidblue, how you doing? What's up, everybody? How you doing?
Hey guys, good to talk to you. Hope everybody's well and safe. Apologies for the video troubles, but not being the technical wizard that you guys are, I was only able to get the audio working tonight.
It's all good. It's all good. But yeah, I'm so excited to have Paul Latino on, guys. If you guys know who Paulie is, man. Just by the voice. If you guys watch Big Blue Kickoff live over the number of years, man, you guys should be just as excited as I am having him on the show.
For sure, man. And tonight we got a lot of people in the chat. Just want to say a quick shout out to them: Edward Chan, Nate Talks Football, Levance, Joseph Balby, Frankie G. We have the usuals in here. Thank you guys so much for tuning in as usual. Without you guys, the show was impossible. And I guess we could hop right into it. I'm sorry, I might put you on the hot seat here at first a little bit, Paul, but we got to talk about these injuries, man. Specifically, towards the Giants' offensive side, the football. Week 1 is coming up. It's this Sunday against Denver. What are your thoughts on guys like the big guys, Saquon, Kenny Golladay? What do you think about their injuries? Is there any chance you think they can make it back? Things like that.
Well, based on what we saw at practice today, and they only had shells on today, it was only half of the uniform, not the full pads and so forth, which Coach Judge will do on Wednesday. That's going to be the big ramp up day where guys like Barkley, Golladay, Rudolph, those guys are going to get hit a little bit because they'll be practicing in full pads and they'll be thudding, as they say, which means there will be heavy pushing, heavy contact, not necessarily throwing guys to the ground or landing on them and squashing them, but there'll be some bumping and bruising going on Wednesday, and that's the really big practice where we're going to find out how those guys do in terms of the injury list and who is going to be on track to play against Denver. Now, you guys have promoted very nicely Big Blue Kickoff Live, the show that I do 3 times a week on Giants.com. I've been saying for weeks, specifically the last 2 or 3, that I believe Barkley, the arrow is pointed in the right direction for him to dress and play against the Broncos.
Nice.
I have said that now for at least 2 to 3 weeks. I believe that he would probably be limited. I don't think you'll see 25 touches week 1 against Denver. Remember, they also have a game the following Thursday in Washington. It's not prudent for the Giants to give him the full workload, I don't think, right out of the box. But because of what we've seen, he runs, he stops, he starts, he cuts, he spins, he accelerates. We have seen all the natural movements that Barkley had before he was hurt. They have all come back to him. What we have not seen is him take a hit or be tackled, and we have not seen him try to push the pile, break a tackle, or carry a defender on his back. Now, those are things you're going to only see once he's in a game.
Right.
So it is my opinion, as the arrows continue to point toward Denver, that Golladay, that Barkley, that Lemieux, that Rudolph will all play. Adoree Jackson. I think they'll all play. The guys who I have the most doubt about, and I said it on today's BBKL show, is Evan Ingram, and Caden Smith was on the side today. Now that's interesting because that leaves only one of the 3 tight ends currently on the 53 who would be healthy, and that would be Rudolph. So I don't know exactly. Smith,
And Rudolph, correct me if I'm wrong, just came off of, was it the PUP or IR, right?
Yeah, he just came off.
Caden Smith?
No, Rudolph.
Oh, Rudolph. Yeah, Rudolph came off, and he's been practicing for a little over a week with the foot thing from last year with the Vikings. So it seems to me right now as I sit here tonight, Ingram is the guy who's got the least chance to play, and I'm not sure what's going on with Caden Smith. To let the fans in on how things work, Coach Joe Judge is the only one who's allowed to comment on injuries. He talks before practice. So you understand, we talk to Judge, we watch practice, Caden Smith doesn't work out. So now the only thing we can go by is what we see. And in today's game, a lot of veterans have they either get fatigued or they get a little nicked up or a little tweaked, or the technology sensors that are attached to each player during practice go off and say that the guy is breathing a little too heavy, or he's sweating too much, or he's exerting himself too much. Then the trainers step in and they say he can't practice today. Sometimes the guy's not even hurt, but because the sensors told the trainers that we think he's being pushed a little bit, they take the guy out of practice. So what we've created is a new term at football practice in the last couple of years. It's called load management. Load management simply means that the guy needed some time off and they gave him a break and didn't have him practice that day. So Caden Smith may have been under load management today. I don't know. I just know he was on the side with the trainers. And unless, let me just see here, the Giants, they put out a post-practice notebook. And I'm just going to take a quick look here as we're on our program to see if they did list him officially with any type of injury. And as I'm looking at it now, I do not see anything listed. I may have, I don't see anything. So I suppose he was probably in load management.
Okay.
A player, if I recall, that they said was in load management, I believe last week it was either Friday or Thursday, was Andrew Thomas, right?
That is correct. And Andrew Thomas did practice today. And when we talked to him after practice, he said he was fine.
Okay, so it looks like Caden Smith, I guess, is just under load management, and they'll at least have Kyle Rudolph and Caden Smith.
That's what I would think right now. As I peruse through the notes that the Giants sent me after practice, I do not see anything written here about Caden Smith.
Now, these tight ends that we have on the practice squad, we've got a couple of them. If those two tight ends on the active roster do not wind up playing, is there a chance that one of those get bumped up to the active roster, or you think they'll just go along with Kyle Rudolph and see how things go there?
No, they'd have to bring somebody up.
Hmm.
It just seems to me, first of all, I'm going to assume that Smith plays. I don't believe that there's anything wrong with him. I think it was load management. So if not, well then of course they'll just have to take somebody off the practice squad, one of the tight ends they have there, and elevate them. And my guess is as good as yours right now because again, I think that Smith is probably going to be okay.
Real quick, I just want to get this super chat before we continue. Shout out to Tudo Azuri. I appreciate it. He's always in here supporting us. A Giants fan all the way from Italy, all the way from Sicily, I believe, actually. He says, salute Kush, KB, and Paul. Drop by our office to pay our proper respects and to turn on the lights for the show. Forget about it. As always, Tudo, I really appreciate you, man. Thank you for tuning in. You can go ahead there, KB.
Oh, yeah. A guy that we didn't really mention now, but a guy that we haven't seen at all was our first round draft pick, Kadarius Toney. Do you think he's completely okay? He's ready to go 100%. There's no doubts with him, or is there something we should be concerned about?
Tony's another guy who hasn't taken hits, but he's done everything else over the last week or so in practice, whether it's been fielding punts or running routes in the offense. So I think all arrows point to him playing.
Awesome.
I do have a couple of questions here from the chat. Levan says, Paulie Dots always has the inside scoops on the G-Men. Football Talk with Benny, one of our young fans, says, oh, this is an interesting one. How will Jason Garrett use Kenny Golladay? Because there was not that many deep passes last year. Will he do more long passes, or will they use Golladay a different way, in your opinion?
Well, Galladay's the kind of guy who's average about 15 yards a catch. He is a deep threat. But let's not forget, because of his length and his height and his physicality and his ability to make the contested catch, he can be an incredibly dangerous possession receiver in terms of just moving the sticks. Look, fellas, this is not a secret, okay? Since Hakeem Nicks, the Giants have not utilized the back shoulder throw as
Mm,
a key part of their playbook. He was the last one who really was outstanding at it. Plexico was even better at it, but
mhm.
Nicks was really good at it. Cruz could also do it, but Nicks was really sensational. I still think Burris is the best I'd ever seen in a Giants uniform at that particular route. I think that Golladay can be deadly with that route. And so, to me, yeah, I'm sure they'll take some deep shots with him, but I got no problem, on a 3rd and 8, if they want to go back shoulder throw for 11 yards and, it's only an 11-yard gain, but it moves the chains. So, I mean, I guess my answer is I think you'll probably see some of both with Golladay. You'll see some deep stuff, but it wouldn't surprise me if he just winds up moving sticks.
Mm. Yeah,
Anything to bounce off there, KB?
no, I completely agree with what he's saying there. I had seen this question in the chat. I didn't want to get away from here. One from I'm sorry if I mispronounced his name, Yuvraj Singh. A little bit about you, Paul. It says, how is it like working as a New York Giant media member? Because we all recognize you and know you from Giants.com for years now. How is it like working over there with the New York Giants?
Well, guys, this is my 39th straight season covering the Giants.
Nice.
Uh,
That's nice.
13th season with Giants.com and the WFAN Giants radio network. But I've been covering the team for 39 straight seasons now as we open up on Sunday against Denver. So to say that it's my lifeblood is probably an understatement. Um, I hope I can do this for at least 50 years. That's my goal, to cover the team for 50 years. After that, who knows? I'll probably want to go on and do it for another 10 and make it 60.
They
Gotta
gotta
hit
put
that
you in the Hall of
milestone.
Fame. They gotta put you in the Hall of Fame somehow, man. They gotta.
Now
but,
that's simply
but
amazing.
Yeah.
well, here's the thing, guys. It's a job that I've wanted ever since I was 5 years old.
Mm.
I wanted to be a sportscaster slash potentially sports writer, but first and foremost, a sportscaster. And I wanted to work around and cover the New York Giants since I was 5.
Wow.
It has been my dream job forever. Outside of a month or so when Neil Armstrong landed on the moon, I thought for about a month at that time that I might want to be an astronaut. And then after
Same
about a
here.
month, well, here's what happened. After a month of thinking that if I can't be a Giants announcer, I'd like to be an astronaut, I started to think to myself, what happens if I go up there in space and can't make it back home? So I decided after about a month or so that Neil Armstrong and the astronauts could keep the moon to themselves, and I'm going to concentrate my entire life on becoming a New York Giants announcer. And that is in fact what has happened. And now I start my 39th season on Sunday against the Broncos. And
Wow.
I thoroughly, despite the pandemic and the protocols that have been in place and some of the different logistics that we've had to endure as media members, I can honestly tell you that the flame still burns bright, and I love the job, and I always have a smile on my face, and I enjoy it as much as I did today as when I started in 1983.
Wow. That's inspiring, man. To do what you wanted to do since you were 5 years old and pretty much cover the team that you've supported since you were born, man. That is inspiring for for anybody watching this.
Well,
Absolutely
it's
incredible,
kind of
man.
you to say. I just hope I don't inspire anybody who wants to come and take my job.
Listen, between me and you, I'm coming for it. Let me stop.
Well, you're going to have to wait at least another 11 years.
Probably. This one is kind of related to what I want to ask, kind of based off that last question. Joseph was asking how long did it take you to have the job you currently have, which I'm guessing he's referring to working directly with the organization. What was your career path like? Where did you start off at? Like, was it a local newspaper or something? And then how did you build your way up?
Well, I went to Fordham University. So, like many of the WFUV FM radio alums, you probably know a lot of the names: Jack Curry, John Giannone, Bob Papa, Chris Carino, Ryan Rucco. We're Michael Kay. We're all WFUV Fordham guys, and so I went to Fordham specifically for the radio station. I laugh sometimes. I tell people I didn't go to Fordham. I went to WFUV because when I was in school, the 4 years I was there at Rose Hill in the Bronx, if I was not in class or covering and working a game, you found me at the radio station. That's where I was. I did my homework there. I ate my lunch there. I hung out there. I did my sportscast there. That's what it was all about for me. And because I felt that was the best college radio station that I could get my hands on, and that would help me fulfill my dream of becoming a sportscaster who would be able to cover the New York Football Giants. And lo and behold, that's exactly what happened. And so that's how I originally broke in. I started covering the team for WFUV, going to practice every week in 1993 when Bill Parcells became the Giants head coach. That was my first year. And subsequently, over the course of time, now again, starting my 39th season, I've worked for 7 different organizations, but never not done the Giants because every time there was a change, whether it was ownership or a change in hierarchy in the front office of the station or the paper or the program, it didn't matter because there was always somebody else who said, "Hey, man, you cover the Giants. You've been doing this. You know your stuff. We want you." So I've been able to hop and bop around over the course of time with WFAN, with ESPN, with the Connecticut Radio Network, with obviously Giants.com, with the Bergen Record. I was a writer for a couple of years where I was not necessarily doing as much TV and radio, but I was doing more writing covering the Giants. So, I've always found somebody who said, "You know what? You know the team. You've been doing this for a while. We need you." So anytime that one door closed with one particular issue or opportunity, there was somebody else who said before the next season started, "We need you to cover the Giants." And so here I am now. The last 13 years, though, consistently, I have been with WFAN and with Giants.com. So that's been a steady run now for the last 13 seasons.
I just want to say that's just a testament to how much work you put in to your work to covering the Giants. The fact that there was always a door there, it just shows you just how great you are at your job. That's simply amazing to me, man.
You're very kind. I will tell you, there was a lot of planning going on from the time I was in college. I tell people this all the time because I get asked to speak at schools often. And I tell the people, I said, "Listen, you may not want me to speak in front of your class." And they're like, "Well, why?" And I said, "Well, first of all, I'm going to tell them the truth about the business. I love my job. I don't love my business. The media business is extremely difficult. And you will go through all kinds of bumps and bruises and sacrifices as you try to climb the ladder. And believe me, I mean, for years and years and years, I juggled 5 part-time jobs at once and worked 85 hours a week, for literally 8 months at a time. And that's just the way it is because once I started covering the team, I never was going to give that up. And in the early days when I started doing it, the pay was very minuscule. So it wasn't gonna put food on my table, but it was something that I knew I needed to do with my life. I took classes when I was at Fordham, and I was a sophomore in school when I started covering the team. And so I took classes around Giants practice so that I could go to practice and cover the team. And I don't recommend necessarily that any student does that. And that's why I tell these advisors, you may not want me to talk to them because I told them I knew I was going to cover the team. And so I would take electives. Of course, you had to take your mandatories, your mandatory credits and your required courses. I took those. But when it came time to take the electives, I purposely took electives that worked around Giants practice so I could hustle back from the Bronx at Rose Hill over to the Meadowlands and go to practice.
Wow.
How long of a commute was that, by the way?
Well, I'm sorry?
How long of a commute was that?
Oh, it wasn't that bad. It was roughly about 40 minutes,
Hmm.
with some red lights, going down Fordham Road and then getting across the George Washington Bridge. Um, I made sure that, I was either off on a particular day that I knew they were going to be practicing, or I knew that I would take a class at 8 o'clock in the morning that was going to get me out at 10 because practice was going to start at 11. So, and then I would make sure that I didn't have any classes the rest of the day so that I could hang out at practice and just do what I wanted to do. So, you know, educators don't want to hear that. I plan classes around Giants practice. What
Yeah,
I
they don't
mean,
want to.
but
wants to hear that?
to be fair, you were doing it as a way to help you further what your career was, right?
Well, that's how I see it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, that's how I see it. I approach this job with the same relentless passion that LT went after quarterbacks.
Love it,
And
love it.
nothing was going to stop me.
Mm,
It's certainly not a class. The hell with that. So I took classes around practice. I mean, it's just that simple. I covered the New
Hmm.
Jersey Generals for all 3 years they were in the USFL. I did the
wow,
same thing in the spring. So I covered Herschel Walker and Doug Flutie and all those guys with the Generals for 3 years in the mid 80s.
wow.
Because
I
I have a passion for my job and specifically pro football and specifically the New York Giants.
I'll tell you right now, you are definitely making yourself a childhood hero to everybody in this chat right now.
I don't know about that. I think people
No,
probably,
we
We
can
you
tell
need
guys
you.
probably think I'm
this
crazy.
this in this day
No,
and age, this generation and younger need that type of like testimony of your life, dude. Just
they
everything,
need to
like
see what
all
kind
your
of
effort
tenacity
pays
it could
off.
take.
Right. All your effort pays off.
Well, you know
And
what, though,
yeah.
guys? To be fair, I put my family and my friends through a lot.
Mm,
I really did, and I took classes I didn't want to take and just, got C's in them because I didn't care because it was all about making sure that I could go to practice and I could interview Phil Simms and I could interview Lawrence Taylor and I could
mm.
interview Harry Carson. That was more important to me than the stupid English lit class that I had to take at 8 o'clock in the morning, you know, but I did
Yeah.
what I had to do. I got through, the classes and, you know, but seriously, I mean, if you're going to be a piranha or a pit bull and go after something with relentless intensity, understand you will miss a lot of stuff. You will tick off a lot of people. Your
Mhm.
family and friends, many a times, are going to be very angry with you. It's like, you know, I can't tell you until Tom Coughlin took over. Do you know I went to Giants practice every single Thanksgiving and told my family I'm not going to
Wow.
be home for Thanksgiving dinner?
Hmm.
Or if you're going to make it, you can hold something for me for leftovers because I'm going to Giants practice. I mean,
Wow.
that's how important it was to me. And then Tom Coughlin came in as head coach and said, I'm not letting the media come to Giants practice on Thanksgiving. We're going to have a morning practice. I want to get my players out of here. No interviews. I'm closing practice on Thanksgiving.
Mm.
And it's been closed ever since Coughlin got here. But before that, up until 2004, when Coughlin arrived, from 83 to 2004, I attended every Thanksgiving Giants practice.
Wow.
And my family wasn't happy,
Wow.
but you do what you do what you do.
Mhm.
If you want if you love it, you have a passion, you have relentless intensity for it, and you want to be the best, you got to do it.
No, I think it's very sound advice that you're giving here because we do have a lot of like young viewers, young listeners on the podcast. So I appreciate that so much. To kind of get back to the chat, shout out to Tudo once again. He says Paulie always likes skyscrapers on the roster. All I need is to learn the playbook and schemes. If they can afford me, I'm in. Is it true? Have you always liked skyscrapers on the roster, as he's saying?
I've always believed, and this goes back, many years, that you should have at least one skyscraper in the
Mm.
wide receiver room.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Um, I go back and to be honest with you, when I think about some of the guys on the Giants over the years who have done that type of style of play or brought that to the table, I always see how useful it is because the Joe Juraviciuses of the world, the Ed McCaffreys of the world, which these guys are before your time, but then more recently Plexico Burris, even Akeem Nicks, who wasn't a true skyscraper, but because of his length and the way he played like he was 6'4", even though he was only
Right.
6'2".
Mm-hmm.
Okay? There's a value in those guys because not only do they have a better chance of winning the 50-50 ball downfield, but obviously they're threats in the red zone. They're threats in the medium range game because they're going to be able to move the sticks and move the chains. I've just always had that affection that every year there should be a skyscraper in the wide receivers room. And anyone who's been listening to me on BBK or a fan, and obviously your fan who made your listener who made the comment, he must have been listening to me because
Yeah.
I've been screaming since Burris and then Knicks that the Giants need to get a skyscraper in the room. You can't have a bunch of 5'10", 5'11" guys
Mm-hmm.
running around downfield, especially the way the game has changed. If you're going to have a pocket passer like Eli Manning was, you got to give him a tall target so he can throw it up there and let the guy go get it. It doesn't make sense to have him throwing down from the pocket to a guy who's 5'11" all the time.
Right.
So,
yeah.
Skyscrapers, they're always going to have a certain advantage. They kind of had one in Ruben Randall a little bit.
What a name, man. That Ruben Randall.
Here's the thing. Ruben could have kind of been one a little bit. He didn't have the true height, but he did have some length. He could have been a pseudo skyscraper, but he had trouble with the routes. He wasn't very reliable.
They tried out a lot of guys out there, like Brandon Marshall.
Barden was another one.
Yeah, Ramses Barden.
Unfortunately, Ramses Barden did not have physicality, could not get off the line against man-to-man press coverage, and consequently couldn't get open. Well, a skyscraper who can't get open either is also a problem because there do have to be times where you're going to have to create some space. Not all the time, but you got to do it sometimes. And you certainly need the defensive back to respect you athletically. And Barden was just so slow. If you don't have speed, you better have quicks. Quicks are the rapid movements in the short to medium range routes where you can stop and go, you can turn and spin, and you can cut with rapid fire motion. Okay, that's different than speed, where speed you're going downfield on a post or going downfield on a sideline route or a go route, and you got that 4.4 speed. That's different. You're just racing by somebody like the Flash.
Right.
Quicks are totally different. And Barden didn't have either. So that's why he flamed out.
Yeah, and I'm sure Kenny Golladay, that's why we're all excited about Kenny Golladay, because exactly what you said, we need that one skyscraper on the team. The Giants have tried to get that guy since for a long time now. You got to look at guys like Brandon Marshall. We tried guys like Corey Washington, who I liked but could never, be consistent and make it out to the roster.
Brandon Marshall was on the end of his rope and then he got hurt.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
But you're right. They did try Brandon Marshall. Corey Washington, here's the thing. Corey Washington came in at a time when he was a rookie. He caught a touchdown pass in each of his 5 preseason games with the Giants.
We were 5-0 in that season, in the
Correct.
preseason.
That was the year Strahan went into the Hall of Fame.
Right.
Okay? And I remember everybody, and I mean everybody, wanted him to make the roster.
Yeah, that was me.
But Tom Coughlin had a rule.
Mm-hmm.
You have to practice well and earn your spot on the roster. If you don't excel in practice, you don't get elevated from the practice squad. And Corey Washington never practiced well.
And Joe Judge has a very similar rule right now as well.
That's it.
Yeah.
You got to earn your spot. You don't get it handed to you. And so Corey Washington was not a good practice player. Consequently, he never got a spot. And he's bounced around. I think he wound up on 4 different organizations before he finally left the league.
Yeah, I think more than that too. He was with a lot. I follow him on Twitter, and he was with like a one franchise every year.
Right.
Well,
because the tape in those preseason games was rather enticing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But then you get him into camp, and then when he doesn't put out on the practice field, and it's like, well, I can't justify putting the guy on my 53.
Right.
So I gotta ask you, personally, as a fan, how excited were you when they finally closed the deal with Kenny Golladay?
Well, I mean, look, I told you, I love having a skyscraper in the room. So as a football guy, philosophically, it matched what I believe the team needed. Okay, I've said it for years. They got to go get one. Well, they went and they got one. A guy who is the best contested catch wide receiver in the National Football League. So I thought it was brilliant, and I would have done the same thing. I didn't know that they were going to be able to afford him, to be honest with you. I knew he was going to want to be one of the highest paid receivers in the league, and deservedly so. I was unsure whether the Giants were going to be brave enough and to have enough money and to structure it enough that they'd be able to bring him in. He's not the highest paid receiver. He's one of the top 10. I think he might be 6. I think he might be 6. He's not like 1, 2, or 3, I don't believe. And I figured that Golladay was going to want to be number 1 or number 2. And I didn't think the Giants could pay him that much. So I had my doubts as to whether or not they could go get him. But when they got him, oh my God, it certainly made a lot of sense.
Yeah, agreed. You can get to those super chats there.
For sure. I want to say a big shout out to OGR Sports. He's been a member of the channel for a while. He says, "Got to love Paul." Throwing it back to Joe, I can't even pronounce this.
That's Juravicious.
Juravicious. Former Penn State Nittany Iron, by the way. Love the content, guys. That is definitely before my time. I can't even pronounce that name, man. And then to Jonathan, he says, for Paul, I love Dexter Lawrence. What kind of jump do you think he'll have this season based on what you've seen from practice?
Well, Dexter Lawrence in his first 2 years with the team has gotten better every game that he's played. He looks even more sculpted this year. Do I dare say, he better not hear this because he's a big man, and I don't want to take him off. But do I dare say he has shed the baby fat?
I was gonna say no. I agree with you because every time I see Dexter, I'm like, there's no way what is he 340, 350? Because he doesn't look it. He's just all muscle to me. Like you compare him to a guy, Danny Shelton, who's only 10, 20 pounds heavier than him. Like Shelton looks bigger and I hope I'm not taking off Danny here because he has a lot more, fat on him. He's like Dexter is like just built of pure muscle.
Danny Shelton is just a torso. There's no arm or leg. He's just a big torso in the middle of the line. That's all he is.
Right.
But Dexter Lawrence, there's no question that he has showed tremendous athleticism. His experience and his knowledge of the game is allowing him to be even better than he was his first 2 years. He looks like he's primed for a dynamite season. But again, he is more of a point of attack guy. Now, he can get up and down the line and make plays, but I don't think you're ever going to see him get more than 4 or 5 sacks. That's just not his game. That's why they need other guys to rush the passer. But that's not to say that Dexter Lawrence is not an incredibly valuable player to them, because he is and will continue to be for a number of years.
And Dexter, in terms of pass rush, at the very least, I think has always shown ability to push the pocket, so to say.
Yeah, there's no doubt that he can push it, because a man of that size and athleticism is going to create some pressure. You're going to have offensive linemen who, won't be able to necessarily hold the point of attack against him. But that doesn't mean he's going to be able to shed and get the sack.
Mm-hmm.
That's right. You're asking a lot there.
Right. Yeah. I mean, we've only seen, we haven't had a lot of run stuffers get a lot of sacks. You go back to Jonathan Hankins a couple of years ago, he had 7 sacks or something like that. But yeah, I'm completely in agreement with you. He probably won't have more than 4 or 5 sacks, but he's definitely going to be a force on that line.
And he's always one thing I always loved about Dexter coming out as well. He always gets his hands up at the line of scrimmage to at least try and bat the ball.
Yeah, bat the pass.
And I think he had a couple of those his rookie year. Yeah,
in the college years too.
Yeah, and then Giants Opinion Sports, referring to the pass rush, says, "Do you think, Paul, that Lorenzo Carter can be the number 2 pass rush to Leonard Williams?" He says you have gotten a close look at Lorenzo in camp, and obviously recently, I think it was in a post-practice interview, Patrick Graham had a lot of good things to say about Lorenzo Carter this year.
Lorenzo Carter looked like he was primed to have a breakout year last year in his 3rd pro season, and then he ripped his Achilles.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the end of that. He has come back more mature, more determined, and probably in the most physically imposing condition that I've ever seen him. So this is year number 4. We usually say standard procedure is year number 3 is your breakout year. He got sidetracked because of the Achilles. So
Mm-hmm.
now let's see if year number 4 can be his breakout year. I've always seen Lorenzo Carter more as a dominant point of attack, hold the line kind of linebacker, a strong side linebacker, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
More so in the type of utilization of Carl Banks. Okay. Not a Lawrence Taylor weak side pass rushing linebacker, but
Mm-hmm.
more along the lines of how the Giants use Banks, who, by the way, could still rush the passer.
Mm-hmm.
But he was a strong side guy who, wiped out the running game to that edge. And of course, beat the stuffing out of tight ends who tried to get off the line and get downfield to catch a ball. I mean, Banks was the best ever, in my opinion, at beating up tight ends off the line of scrimmage. That's a lost art today. Nobody does that anymore. They all play video game football. You
That's
know,
for
they,
sure.
they don't they don't want to beat people up. Your strong
Right.
side linebacker needs to be a bully,
Mm-hmm.
and Banks was. So I think that Carter, to me, that's more of the prototype of the type of player he should be. But if they decide to unleash him on the pass rush and he goes out and gets 10 sacks, well, that's fine too.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
when you say he's the most physically imposing you've ever seen him, what exactly do you mean by that? Like, is he bigger? Does he look more
He
athletic?
looks he looks thicker and cut
Mm.
and stronger
Mm-hmm.
than I've ever seen him before. The definition, he's always been a very impressive athlete. When you look at him, you say to yourself, man, look at this guy. You know, he could hurt you. but now you look at him, he just looks more solid, you know. Um, let's put it this way. You remember the old Batman TV series when Batman, had his suit on and he didn't exactly look muscular or cut as
Mm-hmm.
opposed to the Batman movies where these
Uh,
guys look like they're physically
Like,
strong
yeah, yeah.
because they're solid and they're
right.
defined. Well, think of that. Lorenzo Carter always looked, I don't want to say he looks soft like the
Mm.
like the old Batman, like Adam West. I don't want to say that. But the point is he looks much more physically cut and imposing and stronger than I've ever seen him look before.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's great news for us. We've been trying to get something out of Lorenzo Carter for as Giants fans for years now. Well, it's good that he's coming back from injury. It sucked that last year he got hurt the way he did because he looked like he was primed to make a big sort of I don't know, ascension into the league and into the NFL last year, but got hurt.
You say Lorenzo, you compare him to Carl Banks. Now I'm gonna ask about the rookie
I don't know. No,
Aziz.
please. I don't want your folks out there to say that.
No, I'm talking about okay,
What I'm
like
saying is
the
the
role he would
style of
play.
play. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'd like to see him in a strong side linebacker role. That's what I'd like to see him do. Now, if he can do more than that, God bless him. But I think he can be an outstanding strong side linebacker, and I'd love to sick him on tight ends and beat the stuffing out of him and make him black and blue. That's what I'd love to see him do.
Would you say Aziz would be, I'd say, the Batman to his Robin then in that
Oh,
sense?
Aziz Ojulari is a weak side linebacker.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
He's a blitzer. He is a pass rusher. No, they are totally different. That's the difference between your typical weak side linebacker and your strong side backer. Your weak
Nice.
side linebacker is a guy who's going to rush the quarterback, and he's also going to track down guys because he's got open space on the weak
Hmm.
side. He's going to track guys down in the run game. They're different responsibilities. They're
Yeah,
totally
yeah. I
different
think I
players.
might have phrased it wrong because I was referring to you said the Carl Banks role. So what I was trying to make, or I guess I should say, the comparison I was trying to make was if he's the Carl Banks role, the LT role would that be filled by Aziz? You think?
Well, again, you're talking about LT was a weak side backer. Carl
Mm-hmm.
Banks was a strong side backer. So in your typical old school nomenclature, that's correct.
Mm.
I would make Ojolari the weak side, and I'd make Carter the strong side. You get these people off the ball linebacker. They love to create these new terms and new
Yeah,
phrases.
off ball.
All right. Yeah. Okay. Great. You know what? Weak side linebacker, middle linebacker, inside linebacker, strong side linebacker. Okay, we don't need to create new phrases just because video game people want to.
Yeah, right. Thank you. Thank you.
Have you liked what you've seen from Aziz so far in his rookie offseason?
Yes, yes. I
Nice.
warn you, rookie pass rushers usually do not make large impacts in their first season in the league. It just doesn't happen. Very rarely is a rookie. I mean, last year, right? Okay. Young went down to Washington and he had 7.5 sacks to lead all NFL rookies. Okay. Not another rookie had more than 3 sacks last year.
Right.
Not a single one.
Right, and just like the New York Giants in the franchise, I mean, our franchise leader in rookie sacks is B.J. Hill, 5.5.
Well,
So
that's deceiving because Lawrence Taylor had
right, Lawrence
9,
Taylor back
they
then,
don't
but
count it. I know they don't
right,
Well,
count
we're
it.
talking
right.
about Lawrence Taylor. He's like one of the greatest
Yeah,
players to
but
ever play.
even Lawrence didn't have 10.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, even Lawrence didn't reach double digits in his rookie season of 1981. So let's make that clear. It's very, very rarely does a rookie pass rusher come into this league and light it up with half a dozen or more sacks. It does not happen very often. I'm looking at Ojulari. I see he's going to be a big part of that pass rush package. They have a lot of faith in him. They're moving him around. They're not keeping him in just one spot. I can tell you that from watching practice. I can't tell you much more because we're not allowed to. But they are moving him around. And this guy, he has shown a lot of flashes in practice. He's exciting me. I wouldn't be shocked if he got 5 or 6. Let's put it that way.
So do you think he's gonna immediately go into that starting role? Because I think O'Shane is ahead of him right now, right? As far as starters.
Well, again, guys, it's because the different packages that Coach Graham is going to use.
Okay.
It does it really matter who starts?
I understand
it doesn't
that.
really matter. There's going to be different packages every week, based on the opponent, based on the situation. Just because you start doesn't mean you finish. Just because you start doesn't mean you play the most plays. It's all going to be based on matchups.
Right.
This team, especially this defense, is so deep now that they can afford to mix and match whenever they want to. And that's what makes things fun for Patrick Graham, because he truly has a Rubik's Cube now. And he's not married to just sticking the same 11 out there every week.
Right. And that's what I love about this defense, man. That's why
Speaking of that depth, we added so much to the secondary this offseason. What do you think about a guy in Adoree Jackson for when you got to see him on the field in practice and stuff?
Well, remember now, he tweaked his ankle against the Pats in the joint practice session. And so, we haven't seen much of him since, although I do think he's on the way back. He's a quality player. There's no question about it. He has man-to-man cover skills. Specifically, he relies more on quicks. James Bradbury relies more on anticipation, length, and physicality. Adoree Jackson relies more on quick movements and explosion. And so they're two different styles of corners, but both can play man-to-man. And that's the beauty of what they did by signing him.
You talk about this defense finish, I think, 9th in the league last year. Surprising a lot of people, but we came on so strong. And you go back to what you were saying with depth. We were really relying on, for some positions like the linebacker, like guys that were on the edge of the roster, and Patrick Graham on the players, they got it done. With the depth that we added, and second year in the system, so many things going for them. Very open-ended question, I admit, but where can you see them? What can you see them being in terms of ranking the NFL?
Well, depending upon the metric you used, yards per play, yardage per game, points per game.
I think points per game, they were 9th is what I was using.
And we all know that stats are deceiving. So what I like to say is they were a fringe top 10 defense last year. Because by any metric, that gives you an idea that they're in the upper third of the NFL. Okay, I think that's the fairest way to say it. Because nobody can argue against that. There's no proof otherwise. I mean, look at their red zone defense. They were terrific. I think they were top 3 in the league, if not higher. So the way I see it, I don't think they're going to suffer as much losing Tomlinson, even though I wanted to keep him. Obviously, the cap would not let them.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think they will lose as much as some people thought because Danny Shelton will hold down the fort on first and second down. And then with the additions in the back seven that they've been able to make, whether it be at linebacker or in the secondary, I actually think this defense could overall be better than it was last year. And not just be top 10, but kind of sniff up into that 5-6 range.
Nice. There was a interesting comment here. Blue City Empire Sports was asking about the 3 waiver claims the New York Giants made. Kind of want to touch on mostly Quincy Roche. He pretty much was able to claim a spot over a guy that balled out in Trent Harris. A little bit of a veteran Trent Harris is, but really had a good preseason showing. What do you think about that move? Is specifically, getting waiving Trent Harris and instead bringing in a young rookie in Quincy Roche.
Quincy Roche out of Miami
Mm-hmm.
was one of those tweener pass rushers. He was at Temple for 3 years, was a dominant pass rusher, transferred to the Hurricanes. He's one of those guys who fits at 3-4, which is what the Giants play. And basically, he's got a combination of power and speed. I saw people who thought, scouts who told me, they thought he could go as high as the 3rd round in the draft.
Yeah.
He wound up going in the 6th, to Pittsburgh, which was a hell of a lot lower than I thought he would. Joe Judge had gone to Miami to look at their 2 pass rushers coming out in this year's draft in the rookie class. And so he had told us when the Giants claimed Roche that he had remembered watching Roche at his pro day and was very impressed with him. And that's why the Giants took no time wasting the claim and picking him up off of the Steelers. It's a little soon for him right now. He just got here. It's a little soon to expect him to acclimate himself. I would suspect at least the first couple of games, he won't even get an active roster on Sunday. He's going to be one of those inactive guys, at the beginning, I would think. And then, you know what? Once he starts getting acclimated, let him practice it out. And if he shows that he can do some things, then he'll get himself a jersey. Once he gets himself a jersey, then of course he's going to have to try to outperform guys like X-Man and Ojulari. I don't know that he can do that right off the bat. But if he can, great. If he can't, well, you pretty much keep him around all year as a red shirt and then go to bat next year.
You mentioned you want to go, Kush?
I was gonna say, because we waived Trent Harris to get him, how did you feel about that part of the move? Because Trent Harris was a guy that really battled all the way up to get claimed. To get into the initial 53-man roster. How'd you feel about that part?
Well, he's still here.
He's on the practice squad, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
He's still here.
Okay.
So it's not like he's gone. Look, I remember right before the hit that I did from the field. Right before kickoff on the Giants radio network before the Patriots game. They threw it down to me and they asked me for a quick observation going into the game. And I said, all right, there are 5 guys who a month ago, before camp started, you would have said had no chance to make it on this team. Sam Beal, Madre Harper, Raymond Johnson, Trent Harris, and David Moa. You would have said no way in hell.
Yeah.
What I said tonight is they all go up against the Patriots. Those 5 guys have a chance to sneak onto the 53 and certainly the practice squad. Well, what happened? 4 of the 5 guys I named are still here. Whether it's on the team, Johnson's on the team, Beal's on the team, Moa and Harris are practice squad, and Harper was the only one who left. He went back to the Raiders. And I think it still holds true. Those are 5 guys who, in the middle of July, you would have said to me, no way any of those guys are making this team.
Yeah, definitely Sam Beal is a guy that I did not expect to make this team at all. Just because I don't really question his talent. I think his talent is there. It's his availability with his injuries, because constantly, whether it was practice or preseason games, he was constantly getting hurt. keeping him away from the field. And I thought he was going to be a guy to get cut, and they're going to kind of cut their losses from there. But it seemed like he was able to maintain his health, and he played decently in that, I believe, Patriots game.
The last 2 weeks before the final cut, especially when Adoree Jackson, believe it or not, that last week when Adoree Jackson had tweaked his ankle up in New England, that last week in particular, Beal was making plays. And they were looking at him more closely. And I said, my God, this guy is making a late surge. And I'll tell you something. If you listen to the show, when they drafted Beal, I had a college coach who had played against him. He had taken his team to play against Beal when they were in college. And he had told me, he said, look, I'm telling you what this guy is really good. He's got the skills to play in the league. No question. He's got the skills. And I said, all right, well, let me know what you got. So he gave me the scouting report. I went back and I looked at some tape. And I remember telling people, Sam Beal has the talent to challenge for a starting job in this league. He really does, skill-wise. But as you guys know, and I don't need to tell you this, there are a lot of things that go into making an NFL roster. And skill set is only one of them. But does Sam Beal have the skills to play in this league? He absolutely does.
Right.
Somebody asked a question earlier, kind of going over to the offensive side of the ball. Probably one of the most important, if not the most important players for this team this season, in Daniel Jones. They say, what type of season do you see DJ having?
Well, I'm a believer in Daniel Jones because I look at the last 6 games that he started. It's funny. Everybody in the media and the fan base loves to go with the "what have you done for me lately" mantra, right? You guys know this.
Yeah.
Come on, you do a program.
Right.
Well, how come the "what have you done for me lately" doesn't apply to Daniel Jones? Look at his last 6 starts of last season.
Right.
When he had a terrific run without an interception. He threw 1 interception in the last 6 games.
Yeah, he had. I think it was the longest active streak of no interceptions until.
That's correct. So you were listening because I mentioned that on the MSG show going into the Dallas game. He had the longest active streak without a pick going into the Dallas game, and then Evan Ingram bobbled the ball that got intercepted.
Evan Ingram.
It's always Evan.
Okay. So
always Evan.
So he cut down on his fumbles. He dramatically reduced his interceptions. He took care of his completion percentage. And of course, he had, as you guys know, you've read the stats, he had the best deep ball stats of any quarterback in the league. So where did Daniel Jones go wrong last year? For every critic of Daniel Jones out there, tell me, outside of his touchdown passes, which, by the way, look at the receiving core that he was throwing to during part of the season. He wasn't throwing to Golladay and Rudolph and Toney, okay? He was throwing to an injured Slayton. He was throwing to Shepard. He was throwing to Ingram, who had trouble holding on to the ball. He had C.J. Board. He had Austin Mack. I like Austin Mack, but this receiving core is 10 times better than what I don't want to say that. 3 times better than what they had last year.
It's way better. It's way better.
They're definitely going to get more yards of separation. I remember last year, I think the average yards of separation was like 1.5 yards.
Yeah. It's crazy. And by the way, should we mention Saquon Barkley caught 91 passes as a rookie?
Yeah.
Okay. Saquon wasn't in the backfield last year. So where was their real third down threat out of the backfield? They really didn't have one.
Right.
Let's not kid ourselves. Deion Lewis did not work out.
Oh, that was a bad signing.
Not only is the receiving core better at the top, but I feel like it's just deeper as well this year.
No question.
Yeah.
Better at the top and deeper. So the one thing that you can criticize Daniel Jones for, and the only thing last year, the narrative out there that says he did not improve is such BS. The only thing he did not improve on was his touchdown percentage.
Right.
His touchdowns were way down. But I point to the fact that the running game was decent, pretty good for about half a season. But that's it. So teams didn't have to respect it as much. They
Mhm.
certainly didn't have to respect anybody back there like Wayne Gallman compared to Barkley. And his receiving core was not nearly as talented as it is now. So
Right.
when you put those two things together, is it any wonder that his touchdown stats went down? I mean, come on, people.
And I'm glad you bring up the point of the narrative that he didn't improve his falls, because KB and myself last season constantly were defending him to the point where people were calling us homers for the Giants. But I'm just like, no, his decision making improved. When the offensive line started to block a bit better, you could see that he was picking apart defenses. Authentic in the chat just mentioned the Bucks game is a great example of that. That's why we were able to go toe to toe with the team that eventually went in and won the Super Bowl. Everything, he looked calmer in the pocket. Everything about him, except for the touchdowns, was a notch up.
Just remember something. You will always be called a homer when the facts disprove the critics' narratives.
Yep.
Trust me, I hear about it all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we get constantly called apologists and homers for defending Dave Gettleman and Daniel Jones. We get it all the time. You mentioned that we have a lot of depth in this wide receiving core, and you're right. It looks 3 times better than it did last year. And you also talked about, we spent a lot of time talking about skyscrapers and Kenny Golladay. The Giants brought in a wide receiver that's standing at 6'6", 220 pounds, in Colin Johnson. Had almost 300 yards as a rookie last year with Jacksonville. Do you envision him having any role on this offense consistently throughout the year? Or do you think he would just be a guy on the depth chart that we use every so often? Or do you think Colin Johnson will actually have a role here?
He's an interesting guy because 2 years ago when I scouted his tape coming out of Texas, I begged the Giants to take him on the 3rd day as a sleeper pick because they didn't have a skyscraper, right, fellas?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Colin Johnson, I think he only runs in the 4.6s, but he is
Right.
6'6" tall, so he's got tremendous length. I think he's physical enough. He did have some dropsies in college, but he intrigued me as a late 3rd day selection. I thought he could be a real sleeper for them. I was glad to see him stick in the NFL and make it with Jacksonville. And in limited action last year, you're right, he did catch a couple of touchdown passes, I believe, and averaged like 15 yards a catch.
Yeah.
So, he did show some production. The fact that they claimed him, I thought was interesting because, to be frank with you, David Sills is here.
Right. 6'4", I believe he is.
And David Sills is a skyscraper. And God knows he was productive at West Virginia. And to me, Colin Johnson and David Sills kind of fit the same role in that they're both tall, long skyscrapers who are able to make those kinds of plays against undersized defensive backs. So I was kind of surprised that they grabbed him. I'm not sorry that they did, but I'm a bit perplexed and puzzled as to how does he fit into the scheme when Sills is already here and right now on the practice squad. He's not on the 53, but if they felt they needed another skyscraper, I just would have, brought Sills up on Sunday, which they might do anyway. Who knows?
Yeah, I agree with you. I thought Sills should have stayed on this roster and made the 53-man roster. And you're right. It seemed like Colin pretty much took his role. Do you think maybe it was probably an experience thing? He's already been in the NFL. He's had 300 yards.
I'm sure that's part of it. Look, I had Sills getting cut off my 53 last week
for CJ Board, right? I did too.
Well, because I was of the opinion that Sills could sneak through waivers. I didn't think he would be claimed. Okay. I thought that Pettis or Ross would be claimed if they waived them, and that they would be very sorry if they did that because they would lose them. But I thought that Sills would not get claimed. See, fellas, again, you got to remember something. The initial 53 is not your best 53.
Right.
The initial 53 are the 53 guys that you want on your team, but also believe that you have to have on your team because somebody else will scap them up if you try to sneak them through.
It's a game of chess. It really is.
It is.
Yeah.
So do I think Sills is one of the Giants' best 6 receivers coming out of camp? Absolutely, I do. And I tried to explain that to people. And all the Sills lovers out there were like, what are you, nuts? How are you not going to keep this guy? Well, you know why? Because he's going to get through. You'll still be able to
And he
keep
did.
him.
Yeah, and he did.
And that's exactly what happened. Didn't surprise me at all. That was the right move. It was the smart move by the Giants.
Mm-hmm.
But again, I like to tell people all the time, peel back the layers of the onion. There's a lot of levels to this game besides skills, besides contracts. There's injuries, there's makeup of roster, there's makeup of the room, there's leadership, there's the mix. There are a lot of things that go into it. And I tell people all the time, you got to peel back all the layers of the onion. You have to look at all the different angles of the prism. And too many times people just want the simple one-word answer because all they're looking at is the top layer of the onion. But if you peel back all the other layers, there are reasons why a team has to do what they did. They had to waive Sills. It was the only smart move to make.
Right.
And you know what? It worked out.
Mm-hmm.
No surprise here.
He's right back on, and we could bump him up if need be. Sills is one of those guys on the wide receiving court. I honestly, like you said, he was gonna make it through, but he was also, one of the better guys, which is why fans are like him so much. Going on the opposite side of the ball to the secondary, another part. Well, to be honest with you, I think we have a really deep defense overall, but the secondary is one of the deeper parts as well. Deception here. He says, Paul, what can you tell us about Aaron Robinson? One of our rookies, I think that's been out. Was it a core or abdominal injury or something like that?
Yeah, abdominal core surgery.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a problem because he wasn't able to practice, all through training camp.
Mm-hmm.
3rd round pick,
Right.
They love him. They absolutely love him and believe he can play either corner or safety. And probably even a rover, that star position, which is the safety that rovers around like the 3rd safety, where he could just play anywhere on the field.
It's like a Tyrann Mathieu type guy.
Well, yeah, but the Giants got a bunch of those guys.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they do.
To be honest with you. I mean, to be really honest with you,
Julian Love,
Peppers, Love, Ryan, and McKinney.
Yeah, even
all
McKinney.
Four of their safeties can actually rover all over the field.
Mm-hmm.
It's a beautiful thing.
That's probably definitely the strategy they had going into it.
You brought up one of my favorite guys to look towards this season, and that's going to be Xavier McKinney. What has he shown you?
All right, but first, just to complete with Robinson. So,
Yeah.
If anything, if they get an injury in the secondary, hopefully the second half of the year when he's eligible to be activated, he'll be healthy enough. And maybe if they need him, they would be able to bring him along and give them something at the end of the year, like what McKinney did last year.
Mm-hmm.
But right now, I don't see the need. And he's ineligible now anyway, so it doesn't matter. All right, you asked about McKinney?
Yeah.
What's there not to like?
Personally, I think he was the best safety coming out of that class, but we'll see.
I like
Winfield,
see. But I like Winfield, but McKinney's a Giant now, so I'm all support for McKinney.
He is very athletic. He's very astute. Shows tremendous anticipation. He's a baller. That's all there is to it. He's a baller. He coming out of Alabama, it's not a surprise.
Right.
He's a Landon Collins type, but with more quickness and athleticism than Collins had. Not quite as thick, where Collins was a little thicker and therefore was a bigger challenge in the box against the run. Not that McKinney is a slouch, but not necessarily quite as thick as Collins was. In terms of playing up tight against the line, but certainly more quicks, more athleticism, and more range than Collins had.
And then, because this was off of Aaron Robinson, and this question, I guess we have to get to it at some point. We need to talk about this O-line, Edward Squire says. The reason I say it goes back to Robinson is because there's a good amount of Giants fans that feel like we should have used that 3rd round pick on a guard or on an inside lineman. We made 2 trades that I think were really good for the depth of this team. I certainly think the offensive line depth now is better than what it was 2 weeks ago. But what are you seeing from the offensive line and your general thoughts on it?
Well, fellas, I've said all along that the Giants, looking at their roster, and I do believe at the 53-man roster that they've submitted so far, I think it's a 10-win team. A 10-7 team.
I got them right at 10-7 as well.
Okay, it's a 10-7 team, in my opinion, that should win the NFC East. Now, I will say this: there are 3 potential Achilles heels that could derail them. Number 1 is if the offensive line is not functional. Okay, they've got to be functional. And what do I mean when I say functional? Well, Bill Parcells used to tell us, especially with the offensive line, you're only as good as your weakest link. Because if you've got a guy who you simply can't game plan around because he's just not good enough at his job, it will destroy you, because now you have to eat part of the chapters of your playbook because you can't use them because that particular guy is blowing up and he's causing those plays to go in the toilet. And other teams know that, so they will make sure that they attack him. And so you're just going to be handicapped on a consistent basis. So what the Giants need to do is to make sure they need to get good enough play out of their 5 starting offensive linemen, whoever they are, that they don't have an Achilles heel. Their weakest link has to be functional. The key word is functional. Just be good enough so that your offense can run any play in the playbook and have a chance to make it work. The minute you have to start eating chapters and throwing chapters away because we know that guy can't block it, now you got a problem. That's the litmus test, okay? And not enough people understand that, but that's how a coach looks at it. So
I gotta ask, doesn't some of it go on Jason Garrett as well? Maybe he could call, plays or sets where there's maybe additional people on the field to help him. Maybe that one weak link isn't necessarily all by himself. Like, where does Garrett come into this?
Well, see, but now you're talking about tweaking stuff to adjust.
Mm-hmm.
The idea is you don't want to have to adjust.
Mm-hmm.
You want your 5 offensive linemen to be functional enough so that you can run your entire playbook without having to assist or cheat to help out one of the linemen. That's the goal. That's the idea. Now, on top of that, if you need to cheat, if you need to help somebody out, well, now what do? You got the quick release, you got the rolling pocket, you got the hard count, you got the tight end, you got the double tight end, you got the running back to chip, you got the running back to stay in and just pick up the blitz. You got about, 10 different ways that you can now, as an offensive coordinator, say, okay, guess what? We have a weak link. That particular guy is not as functional as he needs to be. He's hurting our ability to run a bunch of plays. Now we're going to have to make tweaks and make adjustments, and we're going to have to pick some of these adjustments out because we can't run the standard playbook that we want to run. That's what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
But you prefer not to have to do that, obviously.
Right.
Okay? I think that Thomas is better than he's being given credit for. I think that Will Hernandez has had a terrific camp. I think Nick Gates has had a terrific camp. What I don't know right now is where is Shane Lemieux, because he's dealing with that knee injury and he's missed a lot of practice time. And he's a better run blocker than he is a pass blocker. And I don't know exactly where he stands right now. He's out there. He's taking snaps, but I haven't seen him do enough in a game to tell you that I know he can be functional. I hope he can, but I don't know the answer to that. And at right tackle, Parrott has had a struggle. Okay? I'll be honest. I'm telling people now, I wouldn't be surprised if Nate Solder starts against Denver.
Really?
Wow.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Wow.
I wouldn't be surprised if Judge decides to share snaps with Solder and Parrott and decides, you know what, we need to get the kid coached up, so we'll give him some snaps like they did last year. Fleming was the starter. Parrott got some snaps. Wouldn't surprise me if the same thing happened now. A month ago, I wasn't saying that, but Parrott has struggled. So the fallback was Solder starts, and Parrott becomes either the the relief, in a pinch hitting role situation, or a substitution situation, or for that matter, maybe you just play Solder. Maybe he's just playing so well you just let him play. I don't think Judge is going to do that. The way he rotated guys last year, I think he's going to want to use a Fleming Peart combo, only with Solder and Peart.
Mhm.
That's my guess right now. And
Sure.
to be frank with you, I'd like to think that's going to be good enough, but I can't give you an answer on that because I'm not sure. Nate
Mhm.
Solder hasn't played a whole ton either. Remember, he
He's
opted out last year.
how long has it been? 600 days or something like that?
Well, he opted out last season,
Mhm.
Right.
and in his previous years with the team. See, again, a lot of these hurts that these guys have. Remember, there's a difference between playing injured and playing hurt. Okay, injured is on the injury report, and that's legit, and that can put you out. Playing hurt means you're nicked up, you're in pain, but you're keeping your mouth shut and you're going out there and fighting for your team. No matter how much pain you're in, you're going out there because you know the team needs you.
Mhm.
Well, that's what Nate Solder does. Nate Solder plays in pain. And he did that the previous 3 years with the Giants. And it affected his performance. There's no question. He claims now he feels fresh, renewed, he feels healthy. God bless him, because he's a great guy and a great teammate and a
And
quality human being for sure.
he's a great teammate. Anybody that was in doubt of that just has to go and look what he did for the Giants this offseason. He did us a huge favor by restructuring the contract and allowing us
Right.
to make moves.
Well, let's see now what he's got left in the tank.
Hmm.
I hope there's plenty left there that he could do it, because he's a good dude.
Yeah, you gave us some really good information there when it came to Nate Solder and Matt Peart, because I didn't even know that was a thing right now. I thought Matt Peart was the starter, then Nate Solder would kind of fill in where he needs to fill in. But that's actually information I did not know. Do you think the same thing would it happen with Shane Lemieux? We all know Shane Lemieux has issues with pass protecting. Do you think that our new acquisition in Ben Bredesen, would he kind of win a role over Shane Lemieux, even if Shane Lemieux is healthy? Do you think he can kind of work up to that role and start over Shane Lemieux?
Well, let's put it this way, right? Lemieux's nursing a sore knee, right? We know that. And he's missed a lot of practice time. Wouldn't shock me if Lemieux and Bredesen are actually sharing some snaps at left guard to begin the season.
Right.
Hmm.
Wouldn't shock me at all if Bredesen can get coached up in time. Remember, he just got here.
Right. Just throw
If
him right
they
in.
can coach him up in time to be ready to play Denver, I wouldn't be surprised if he shares some snaps. Wouldn't surprise me at all. And then whoever is producing better over the course of the first few weeks would probably be the guy who,
They roll with moving
who
forward.
starts chewing on the snaps. Sure.
Hmm.
Right.
So
Look,
then,
fellas, the bottom line is this.
yeah.
Mhm.
You need to get the most productive 5 on the field. That's the bottom line. I told you before, you're only as good as your weakest link on the offensive line. It's never more apparent than it is at that position.
Agreed.
And if there is somebody there who's not getting it done and they have to platoon him or they have to replace him, they need to do it. They just need to do it.
Right.
You can't afford to play somebody who is not functional. That's just not going to work.
I want to
Agreed.
get just because one of the many things you said was regarding Andrew Thomas, who gets a little more hate than he should. I feel like a lot of things people forget was the ankle last year, the stuff that happened with the line coaches and whatnot. So we know he had that one bad game against the Patriots, but other than that, I think he's been fine for us, right? Like Andrew Thomas as our franchise left tackle. What do you think about that, man?
I think he's had a good summer, above average. Okay. Yeah, he's had some plays he'd like to have back, and he knows that. And his sets have been a bit choppy, and he's still not been consistent with his punch off the line. So there's no question he still has to refine his technique. But as I tell people on the program all the time, he's a second-year player. He came in as a rookie without a true training camp because of the pandemic. He was supposed to be the right tackle Solder opts out. They throw him in at left tackle. He starts the season against 4 or 5 of the best defensive edge pass rushing teams in the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
He loses his confidence, okay? Any player who steps on an NFL field and has lost his confidence is going to struggle. That's a fact. And any reporter or fan who does not recognize that does not understand the game.
Mm-hmm.
The game is incredibly difficult to play. It takes a tremendous amount of physical skill, and it takes a tremendous amount of mental and emotional strength. And if you lose your confidence, if that gets stripped from you, you are going to struggle on the field, point blank. And Thomas has admitted that he had significant doubts and lost his confidence because of what happened in the first month of last season when he was thrown into the fire out of necessity, and some of the best pass rushing teams in the league started to eat away at him. So what happened? He lost his confidence, his technique started to get sloppy, and it was really rough for him. And then after another month or so, all of a sudden he started to get his confidence back, and he started to play better. And look at the Andrew Thomas who played during the second half of the season. Much different player. Same thing I want to ask you, fellas. What happened to the mantra, what have you done for me lately?
Mm-hmm. It doesn't seem to apply to Andrew Thomas for some reason.
It doesn't seem to apply to a lot of these New York Giants. Yeah.
What have you done for me lately never applies to critics when the guy they're picking on does better.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Automatically. Oh, no, I never heard that phrase before.
Yeah.
Okay?
And
they
on top
never want to hear it. And I will tell you something else. When the Giants ran the ball to the left sideline or directly behind left tackle last year, they averaged 5 yards a carry. I get you. Andrew Thomas had some struggles in pass protection. I believe it was he held his opponents without a sack, I want to say, in 5 of the last 8 games that he played last year, which I'll sign up for, by the way. That's not a bad stretch.
Yeah.
But when you consider also the fact that they were very successful running to his side out to the boundary or right behind him, why doesn't anybody give him credit for that? Because the last time I checked, offensive linemen have to block for the run too. But nobody ever says a word about that.
Right, because it doesn't show up in the stat sheet like as a non,
that's
pass
right.
protection. Pass protection equates to sacks and stuff like that. So
there you go. There you go. But because so many people don't want to peel back the layers of the onion, okay? Because oh my God, the facts destroy their narrative.
And on top of that, he's playing just the position he's playing. Left tackle is one of the hardest positions a rookie can play. One of the hardest, most difficult positions a rookie can just be thrown into. So the fact that he did what he did, especially towards the end of the season,
and he improved. He improved. He got better, on an injured ankle too.
Clearly had a really good game against Seattle, where everybody was raving about how well Andrew Thomas played, and that pretty much that offensive line, how they played there. But yeah, Andrew Thomas, especially towards the latter half of the season, really showed that he has potential. It's not like he's an Eric Flowers type guy who couldn't find himself a good game anywhere. Andrew Thomas definitely had a better rest of the season than the first half.
I'm glad you brought that up because I still get comments on Twitter and people have called up BBK. And they're like, he's Eric Flowers 2.0.
That is such an insult,
I know. They're
man.
So quick to say those type of things.
That makes no sense to me.
I know.
They are such opposites in so many ways. It's not even funny.
Yeah.
Andrew Thomas right now is already better than Eric Flowers. I don't think anybody needs to argue that.
Andrew Thomas had at least one good game. That's better than Eric Flowers.
Right? There you go. Flowers, believe it or not, Flowers, his second year with the Giants, I want to say, actually had a good stretch of about a half a season where I think he only gave up 1 sack, and he actually played pretty darn well for about half a season, and that was it.
Yeah.
It's been downhill from there.
I mean, I guess he went up from there after he left the Giants. He wound up getting a good contract. He
switched positions.
But he just got traded again this past off season.
Yeah.
He's playing guard, by the way. He's not even a tackle.
That's what I was saying. Yeah, he switched positions.
Yeah.
let me just get these super chats. Yuri, thank you so much. He says, Paul, which rookie edge rush will make an impact, Ojulari or Roche? Thoughts on Ellerson Smith? Well, we kind of already spoke on Ojulari and Roche, but I guess Ellerson Smith, a guy that a lot of people see as a project player.
Well, he is a project player. You know, he's coming from a small school. He was tutored by Bryce Pop, who was his coach at Northern Iowa. You remember Bryce Pop was an all-pro pass rusher with the Bills and the Packers back in the day. And he told me before the season on BBK that Pop was really raw and that he was going to really need to hit the books, put on some muscle tone, and going to need a lot of experience and a lot of snaps. Liked his potential very much. But again, he's making a big jump. He opted out. Remember, his school did not play last year, so he was in an opt-out situation.
Mhm.
So to me, I had suggested that he winds up IR for the season and basically is a redshirt. But the Giants have him in a situation where he will be eligible to be activated later on this year. But I just don't expect anything from him. Look, you got X-Man. You got Ojulari. Now you got Roche. You know, you also have Carter. You got Carter Coughlin. You got Cam Brown. Do you really need Ellerson Smith to give you anything this year?
Right.
I mean, seriously.
You brought up Zimenez as well, and Zimenez is another person like Lorenzo, like Aziz, that's been having a good offseason, right?
Yeah, so I look at Ellerson Smith as sock him away for next year. Don't even think about him.
And then Tudo here says, I've always said, Paul, the New York Giants have a great roster this year. All they need is a few tweaks, a few phone calls, and a few Italians on the roster. Of course, the Italian fan represent his country well there.
Well, Andy Robustelli's already retired.
That's an him. Oh, man.
And then Simon Z says, Paul, I'm a big fan of you and Lance Meadow. Much respect.
Well, that's very kind. I appreciate that very much. We have a good time.
Yeah.
He also says, I think we just covered this, right? There's a shot Bredesen will be our starting guard. A quick recap of that.
Yeah, we said
There
we
is
said
a
he's
shot.
got a shot.
Not right away. I do think there's a possibility he will take some snaps from the Mew if he's ready to play against Denver. But may the best man win over the course of time.
What are you expecting just for this upcoming game? We have Denver. I guess the matchup everybody's going to be looking at is their edge rushers against our O-line. They have a respectable defense over there as well. They're going to be starting Teddy Bridgewater, I believe. What's the key to this game for the Giants to start off the season on the right foot and with a good foot?
Well, look at it this way, fellas, and I didn't give you the full three Achilles that the Giants have. One is that the offensive line has to be functional across the board. Number two is that Saquon Barkley has to be a semblance of himself. I don't know that he's got to be the guy we saw as a rookie, but I need 85 to 90% of him to be confident that he can still scare defensive coordinators. Right now, I think we're all optimistic that will happen, but until he gets on the field, we won't know. The third thing that could potentially be an Achilles is if Daniel Jones does regress. I don't think that's going to happen. I'm optimistic. But if those are the three Achilles that I see this team having, otherwise, I think it's a 10-win team. I really do. Now, as far as the Broncos, look, the Broncos have a lot of talent on defense. They have rebuilt their secondary. I'm sure you know about that because last year it wasn't any good, and they totally rebuilt it. Their corners. They're not really good against the run, especially inside the tackles.
Right. They have weak interior defense.
So if it were me, my game plan would be really simple. All right. Judge is always going to want to win special teams, win the battle of field position on specials. He's going to want to do that every single weekend. Okay. But on top of that, what you want to do offensively is pound the football between the tackles and bludgeon those guys. Why would you play into their strengths, which is their rebuilt secondary and their two pass rushers Von Miller coming off an injury-plagued season last year where he didn't play. And I don't know at 32 years old what he has left, but I don't want to find out.
Right.
And Bradley Chubb.
Yeah.
Now, why would I throw the ball 35 to 40 times if they got Von Miller and Bradley Chubb on the edges and they've got two decent safeties and two good corners? Why would I play into their hands?
Run the ball is the name of the game.
So if I'm the Giants, I'm definitely going. I'm doing my damnedest to go 55, 60% run pass mix. Heavy run. Heavy run. Not to mention the fact that we've always known it's easier for an offensive line to run block than it is pass block.
Right.
So how many more reasons do I have to give you, to convince you that they got to run the ball heavily in this game? That's obvious.
If Saquon, what kind of workload do you see from him in general? Like, let's say they still keep him in like an ease-in situation. How do you feel about Booker being a guy that we rely on for Denver?
Well, I think Barkley would be limited in the game, which means you will see a lot of Devontae Booker. Would not surprise me at all. I think he'll get more touches than Barkley in the game. He easily could. If the Giants run the ball 35, 40 times in the game, sure. Maybe Barkley has 10 or 12 carries and Booker has 18 or 19. I could easily see that. And Booker runs hard between the tackles. I like what I've seen from him. And he's a good blitzer picker-upper, too, which is a bonus because he's good at pass protection. And he's got pretty good hands out of the backfield. So I've learned to really like Devontae Booker. So I think you lean heavily on him. I think you use a lot of double tight ends. All right? And then on the other side of the ball defensively, you know what? Teddy Bridgewater is a game manager. We all know that. He doesn't make a lot of mistakes. He's going to be very conservative and try to methodically keep the game close and not screw it up. So what I do defensively, I don't take many chances. He wants to play conservative. I play him straight up and say, okay, you want to try to drive the ball 11 plays and 85 yards against this defense? Go right ahead. Take your best shot. See if you can do it. I'm not so sure that he can.
With the kind of game plan that the Giants should go into in this week 1 game against Denver, running the football, make sure you get those tough yardage. And with Saquon getting a limited workload and, you're going to see a lot of Devontae Booker, do you think we're going to see any Gary Brightwell in the mix as well? Try to get some carries in there as well for Saquon Barkley that may get limited carries.
You might see some of Brightwell. That wouldn't surprise me. Look, the fact is that he plays special teams, and they love that. Yeah. Means that he's got a good chance to get a jersey on game day. Although, remember, Gillespie is still on this team, and so is Eli Penny.
2 fullbacks, yeah.
All 3 of those backs play special teams. So, if one of them is going to get left out, it probably would be Brightwell, but Judge may decide he wants all 3 of them as being dressed because, again, they provide that extra piece of the action on specials.
So real quick, I do see a couple of fans in the chat asking about the whether or not they're going to play week 1. Kenny Golladay, Kadarius Toney, Kyle Rudolph. You said Kyle Rudolph was basically the only healthy tight end we have on there right now.
Well, Caden Smith, he said.
Caden Smith,
Caden Smith. Load management.
Yeah. And then
I'm guessing that Smith was a load management issue today. I'm sorry, fellas, unless somebody else has reported something and I didn't see it. I don't believe there's anything wrong with him. So, but Rudolph told us today he's prepared to take as many snaps as they want to give him. He said, I will be in there for 5, 10, 15, 20, 60 snaps, whatever they want to give me until they pull me off the field. I'll give it everything I got. So Rudolph is all systems a go. But obviously he hasn't done a lot until the last week and a half.
Right.
And so what about Kadarius and Kenny then?
Well, I think all arrows are pointing to both of them being active for the game.
Awesome.
Diggy has an interesting question about Daniel Jones. He says, has DJ thrown more off schedule this offseason?
Daniel Jones has barely played. I mean, he
Mhm.
played a half against the Patriots the other night. And by the way, yes, he did throw a bad interception. I'd like to think in a regular season game, I'd like to think he would have either run that ball or thrown it out of bounds.
Hmm.
He did try to make a very awkward throw while he was on the move across his body into the end zone.
I will say this though. I think Ingram was probably supposed to stop there, but I don't know.
There's been speculation about that, and I
Mhm.
understand, but it's still not the easiest throw to make.
Hmm.
Right.
Again, Pat Mahomes, yeah, he can make that kind of throw because he's Gumby.
Mhm.
Daniel Jones is not Gumby. So, the throw itself is a bit of a risky throw. It's not a high percentage throw, being the way he had to contort his body on the move. He didn't set his feet. So,
Right.
so Daniel himself admitted he's got to make a better decision there. But I do think the criticism of him was far too hot. And of course, what about the throw to Caden Smith for the touchdown? I didn't hear anybody who wanted to rip him for the interception talk about how superhuman the throw was for the touchdown.
And we
Yeah,
went
that
vertical.
touchdown
We went
throw.
vertical,
Yeah,
man.
we went vertical, but that touchdown throw was on the money. I've been saying this about Daniel Jones ever since we've watched him throw. I mean, he has such a knack of getting the ball where a high point, getting the ball for a high point for those receivers, and only allowing those receivers to make a play on the ball. Even that incomplete pass earlier in that, I think it was the same drive earlier in that game. Sterling Shepard, there was a throw to Sterling Shepard in the end zone. It was just barely out of Sterling Shepard's reach, and it was like a 9 route, but it was on the money for Sterling Shepard, and the defender, was no way he can make a play on that ball.
A
And so,
skyscraping receiver makes that catch,
yeah,
right?
yeah. Kenny Golladay would have sure as hell got that
There
catch.
you go.
Uh-huh.
That's why you should always have one in the room.
Right.
I do gotta ask.
Anyway, the point
Mhm.
Yeah,
about Daniel Jones, he played one half of football. It's really unfair to grade him.
I do gotta say we've been going for 1.5 hours. It's usually how long we go. Before we close out, just final thoughts. You say the Giants are a 10-win team. Where does that put us in the NFC East? Do we win it? Do you think there's a possibility this current roster and team could go to the playoffs?
Well, I think that is the division champion right there at 10 and
Hmm.
7.
Mm.
I think Washington is the only other team that should concern you. The Giants are the most balanced team in the division. I don't think that is even debatable.
Mm.
When you look at their offense and their defense and their special teams, they are easily the most balanced team in the division. Dallas has an absolutely horrific defense. They rebuilt it with a bunch of rookies this year, and we all know that rookies make rookie mistakes.
Hmm.
Right.
So they got a lot of learning to do before that defense, really comes up to speed. And we know Philadelphia is a hot mess. I mean, there's
That's for sure.
everything wrong with that team right now. So
Philadelphia
you
about to get that first pick.
so you could take Dallas and Philadelphia and pretty much separate them. They're not going anywhere. So this is a two-team race. The Giants beat Washington twice last year. I think if you look at the upgrades the Giants made in the offseason and compare them to the upgrades Washington made in the offseason, you would have to tell me that the Giants did significantly better. I don't think it's even close.
Hmm.
And Ryan Fitzpatrick, well, you fellas, why don't you tell me how many times has he been to the playoffs in his career?
Zero.
I have
Correct.
no idea.
Zero. Yep.
He's had one 10-win season in his career when he had a career year with the Jets when Rex Ryan had a
Right.
sensational
Remember that year.
defense
Mm-hmm.
and was able to get them to 10 wins. Fitzpatrick is older than Grandma Moses. He is
Yeah, he's old, man.
he is very hot and very cold.
He becomes
His
Ryan Fitztragic, man.
his inconsistencies usually cost his team the chance to do anything.
Right.
He
He
can be really good, but he can be really bad. And when
Yeah.
you're that hot and cold, that basically means your team is not going to have a winning record. So, that's a big problem. I'm so tired about, people bashing the living hell out of Daniel Jones. Okay, but Ryan Fitzpatrick has been in this league for well over a decade and has
Well,
won
yeah.
10-win season. So why would anybody even debate that they might think that Fitzpatrick gives the red team a better quarterback situation than the Giants?
Right.
How can anybody say that? Ryan Fitzpatrick's been around forever. We know what he is. We've seen the best he's got. And it was many years ago when he got 10 wins for the Jets. We've seen the best of him. We haven't seen the best of Daniel Jones yet. It's laughable to me, fellas. It's laughable.
Yeah.
And even when you look at the defense, by the way, yes, does Washington have an outstanding defensive line? One of the top 3 in the National Football League? Absolutely, unequivocally, 150% yes. They might even be the best defensive line in the NFL. But are you going to tell me that their back 7 on defense compares to the Giants? It doesn't. It doesn't. The linebackers and the secondary, their back 7, hands down, the Giants are better.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. They got William Jackson III in there, their new acquisition there. And then of course Landon Collins, but I really don't have anybody else that scares me. They like this guy Cam Curl, but we have so much experience on that secondary and depth. Not to mention, we talked about the safeties earlier. Those rover players you're talking about. You pretty much put those guys anywhere and confuse an offense.
How do you think Washington would like Blake Martinez right now? Or Lorenzo Carter?
Blake Martinez, the most underrated middle linebacker in the league.
Dude, I think they would take Tate Crowder right now. They would definitely they would take Tate Crowder.
I think you're right. Especially after he ran that fumble back for a touchdown against
them.
Right.
I mean, so, I'm sorry, fellas, but I catch a lot of grief when I tell people, and I'm like, all right, but think about it. We weed through, the rubbish, and think about it. The Giants have the most balanced team in the division and the highest level of quality. If you look at that line across the board, it's pretty apparent to me. I just don't understand it.
Right.
I agree with most of what you're saying here. I will say Washington is a big threat to us. I wouldn't necessarily count out the Cowboys too much, but the Cowboys are going to Cowboys, and most of their revamped defense is, I should say, are rookies. But I do think it ends up being a two team race between the Giants and Washington for the division, which is what makes that Week 18 game so like fun to watch and makes it have a lot of riding on it, man.
Yeah. Well, I will say this. We know this because the Giants have only had, I guess, since 2013, only one time have they not started 0-2. And that was in 2016 when they went to the playoffs. Let's not kid ourselves, okay? They need to get out of the gate quicker. They just do. And I don't know. Could they lose to Denver? I suppose it's possible. I think they should be favored, but I suppose they could lose that game. And then they go to Washington on a short week. Is it impossible that they could? Look, I'll say this. I said on BBK, I would want to say no worse than 2-2. I would really ask them to be 3-1 in the first 4 games. I don't think it's out of the question they go 4-0. I really don't. I think 4-0 is a reach. It's a reach, but 3-1 is very realistic. And I certainly think you can't settle for anything less than 2-2.
I agree. Those first 2 weeks are going to be super important because I've been saying for a while, I could see us opening up 1-1 with that short week to Washington. I would love for us to go 2-0, but we'll have to see when we get there. We just have to open up fast. We can't start off so like we have so many times in this past decade. I feel like it would really throw the season off for us.
Well, it's going to be interesting to see where that New Orleans game is played now because the Saints are moved out of New Orleans because of the flooding the first month of the season. And at this point, we don't know where that game is going to be played.
I think it's in Jacksonville, no?
Well,
that's just for week 1.
They're hosting there in week 1.
Right.
But the NFL has not made any decisions past that as far as I'm aware. I know the Giants aren't aware of it. We asked Joe Judge about it, and he said he did not know what arrangements were going to be made for their game against the Saints. So will it be at a neutral site? Would it be back here like it was during Katrina? Who knows? Who knows? But, with all due respect to the situation, and I don't mean to make light of it in any way, but the Giants have had some of the absolute worst horror games in the Superdome
Hmm.
that I've seen in the last 25 years.
Oh,
That
yeah.
is not that has not been a kind building for them. So to say that,
Mhm.
they might play the Saints out of that building, I can honestly tell you again, the circumstances aside, because nobody wants to see what happened. Obviously, it's
Right.
horrible and it's tragic, but I think it helps the Giants not to have to play in that building.
Hmm.
Yeah, I mean
100%.
that's the type of place where we score 49 points and lose.
Well,
Uh,
remember the Drew Brees Eli Manning game,
yeah,
Oh
which
yeah,
thanks,
which
Brad.
was
classic.
And
that
Brad Wing
was
got
a classic.
blocked. Hmm.
It was the most impressive passing display by two quarterbacks in a game that I have ever been to personally.
Right.
Hmm.
In
That was
person,
a
I'm
really good
talking about,
game.
not on TV, in person.
Hmm.
I've never seen anything that could match that. That was truly video game football.
Oh yeah,
But it
especially
was good.
Eli Manning's throw to Dwayne Harris on that fourth down, that touchdown
Yep.
was something you only see in Madden, man. I'm telling you.
Eli, that was easily one of the greatest games he ever played.
Oh
And it's
yeah,
and it's a shame that a personal foul penalty at the end on a
yeah. Hmm.
special teams play wound
Screwed
up
it up.
allowing the Saints to kick the winning field goal.
Yeah, that was a heartbreaking season altogether. Heartbreaking
Sure.
season.
But yeah, guys, I just want to say we're about to close it out. Big thank you to Paul Dottino for coming on. I really appreciate you. Spend some time with us, man. We're all big fans of you. It was really nice to get a little bit more of deeper looks at some things, for example, like the offensive line, what you've seen in some players like Lorenzo Carter tonight. Had a great time and learned a lot.
Well, glad to be with you, fellas. It's been a lot of fun. Always love talking Giants football. Been doing it for 39 years. Hope to be doing it a long time from
Yes,
from
sir.
now, for sure. Be well.
No problem, man. And thank you to the chat. You guys are amazing. We have about 130 people in here. Thank you so much. Make sure you guys definitely check out Kidblue. If you haven't for some reason, checked out Paul Dottino on Twitter and also over on Big Blue Kickoff Live. Everywhere you could find a WFAN, go there and do that right now. You guys were amazing tonight. Kidblue, any last thoughts, my man?
No, I just what an honor and privilege it is to have you on, Paul. Thank you so much for coming in, and thank you for the chat, for you guys supporting it, because obviously without you guys, it wouldn't be possible. So thank you guys so much. Thank you, Paul, for coming on, and I had a blast tonight.
Enjoy the season, fellas.
Thank you, you too.
That's it for now.